Hi, I'm Jim Hodson, and I'm making a feature-length documentary about wine. I'm probably only going to get one shot at this, so I want to do my best, but I also want to express myself fully, whatever that means. If I end up going down in flames, I want them to at least be accurate flames. So my film will start with an introduction, and then I want a title sequence to play, and hopefully the title sequence will lend some sort of I want it to feel a little bit highbrow, so that later on when I'm coming in with the scatological jokes, there'll be a meeting of worlds, you know. So what are the challenges for me in creating the kind of title sequence I want? Well, I don't really know that much about lighting or cameras. I know just enough to know how much I don't know. For the record, I also don't really know how babies are made. But again, I know enough to know how much I don't know. But I do have a target. I do have a target in my mind, and I thought if I could get my hands on some interesting equipment, I could probably make something happen. In all honesty, probably the right thing to do here would be to get Caleb to help me, who has been doing sort of, he's been handling the cinematography, director of photography type of role in the location, in the in-person shoots that we've done. The right thing to do would be to get him to help me, but he's expensive. Mind you, he's worth every penny because he's got all of that knowledge, but I can only afford, so much of his time. And on the other hand, what if my idea that I have in my mind to try to achieve this shoot is an untenable, unworkable idea? Then I will have spent the money to have Caleb help me make something that's not makeable. And then I'll feel like 2 times the asshole. I was inspired by this video, which I found on Pexels. I like how dark it is. It reminds me of like a Caravaggio type of painting, which in turn reminds me of Valdemar Januscek, who's a filmmaker who's done a bunch of documentary work for the BBC. And I just love his films. So, I mean, his work has inspired me to make this film. So I love that. It's just very dark and very light, sort of a look. And the word for that I've learned is chiaroscuro. I wanted to make something that had that sort of a look, but was also maybe a little bit more abstract. I found this piece of music, which I like very much, from the YouTube audio library. It's great, and it further sort of inspired me to make what I was trying to make, but it was a little bit long. So the first thing I did was start by shortening the song in Adobe Audition. It's still probably a little bit long for a documentary title sequence. It's about a minute. And from what I can tell, documentary title sequences tend to be more in the like 10 to 20 second range. But that's just based on my whipping around the documentaries that I like and trying to like timing out their title sequences, which is something people do. But I still love what I came up with. So I'm probably going to go with it as baked, so to speak. Now, on the subject of the music, I would love to be working with a composer, but I just don't have the budget for it. And hopefully someday I will get to, if this works and I get to make more work later on in my life, which I certainly hope I do, then I would love to be able to work with somebody like that, but I don't have the budget for it. And it's like, there's this idea that you can say, well, we'll just get an up and coming person and we'll pay them less. But I don't feel like that's really fair. I mean, like, if I had the budget to pay somebody, I want to pay them the rate that they deserve. I don't know. So I don't really feel good about trying to use kind of, I don't know. I just don't feel good about that. So for now, unfortunately, I'm not able to work with a composer, which is annoying to me. But anyway, once the audio was done, I was ready to start working on some visual components. So to start working on the visual components, I rented 3 pieces of equipment. First of all, a Rhino Evo 24-inch slider, which is a robot which moves the camera back and forth, and it also has a turntable that can turn the camera, so you can point it towards something on this end of the slider and it'll slide over here and also turn the camera, so it makes a kind of an arc. It's a pretty cool piece of equipment. And I rented a Sony a7 III's because it can do 120 frames per second. And I wanted that, you know, the finished film, I guess, will be at 24-ish frames per second, probably. But I wanted something that could do 120 frames because it would be like, I could get some really nice liquid, smooth moving video from it. And finally, I rented the Laowa 24 millimeter probe, which is, it's just a very long, weird probe lens that can do some really interesting macro shots. If you want to know more about these pieces of equipment, I highly recommend that you just search for them on YouTube. There's a million people doing gear reviews. That doesn't really interest me, so I'm not going to bother doing a review. Even so, here are a couple of things that I learned. First of all, the a7 III's can shoot 120 frames per second, but only on the Magic Media. And you can't just use a regular SD card and get 120 frames. I didn't realize that until the camera got here to my house. So I was limited to 60 frames per second at 4K, which is, you know, it'll be fine. It was, you know, just a little bit annoying to not have done enough reading to realize that that would be the case. And, you know, it's just one of those stupid things that happens. The second thing I realized is that that Laowa probe is small enough to have been used for amateur colonoscopies. And since I rented that piece of gear, I'm sure that it has been used in that way. So I gave it a little bit of a clean. The probe is really cool, and it does get some really neat shots. It needs a ton of light, but it's really cool looking. But it's also very, very long, which means that like when it's attached to the camera, and the camera's on the slider, you know, the center of gravity with the probe on the camera, the center of gravity of the whole assembly is far out in front of the camera. So the whole thing tends to bounce. You know, when the slider moves, you can just see in the video, it's just bouncing along, which is, you know, not great for the effect that I was trying to get, which is, again, super smooth, like liquid video, you know. So that was a challenge. I just ended up using Warp Stabilizer in post to stabilize it, which is fine. But every time you make a tiny little edit, it needs to reanalyze all the frames, which takes a long time if you've got 4K 60p video. I mean, and it would have been even longer with 120 frames, but anyway. I also tried using the slider in a vertical arrangement, like moving the camera up and down, but it just didn't have the grunt to move the lens with the camera up and down. My understanding is that you can help that with like a counterweight type of system, and I tried to rig something like that up, but it didn't quite work. Long story short, not to toot my own horn, but long story short, I did get pretty lucky. Using this equipment that I rented and some cheap LED tubes, I ended up getting some footage that I really like. And I think the title sequence ended up just about where I wanted it, which is, I feel really glad about that. That's kind of rare. Usually I feel like, well, here's my target and here's my budget and here's what I ended up with. And usually it's like the max you can hope for is like an 85% type of a thing, and you just have to live with it. But this actually ended up pretty good. I'm really proud of it. I'm going to show you a few seconds of the finished title sequence. I do want to save the rest of it because I want to save the rest of it for the actual film, which I hope you will see when it's done. But I do want to show it to you to show you that I got some pretty cool stuff that I'm really excited about. In the meantime, join my mailing list, jimhodson.com, or the production mailing list at mostly serious history of wine.com or sceneshop.us, and I'll let you know when new stuff happens. And I hope that you'll watch the film when it's done. So here it is, a few seconds of my finished title sequence. I'm really proud of this. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being interested in this project. It means a lot to me. It's fulfilling. It feels good to be working on this. I'm also terrified, of course, that I'll end up spending a bunch of money and getting, you know, no return whatsoever. So, but you know, as somebody who likes to make things, it does feel good to be making things and at least talking about making things. So thank you very much for that. Here it is, my title sequence.